Welcome to the Infinite Podcast. I'm Melissa Ruiz Vasquez, and I'm here with my husband, Carlos Andres Ruiz. It's my second time introing. Thank you very much. How are you today?
I'm doing amazing. It's cold in here today.
It is.
It is cold in here. I think I'm gonna have to wear my hoodie more often.
Good thing we're athletes.
Yeah, I don't
Cold bath, or
ice baths.
ice
Yeah.
bath. Come on.
Did you like your ice baths?
We did contrast baths more.
What is a contrast bath?
So it would be like, I think it was like a minute in the cold tub, and then you would jump out and get into a warm tub for like 3 minutes or something like that. So it was like back and forth for like a few
That's
minutes.
no.
Yeah. So I like those a little more because then you're like enjoying your time. in the hot.
Absolutely not. Because then you gotta move
Oh
and
yeah.
start
Yeah.
again. No, the hardest part of an ice bath is once you are in and you're numb, somebody jumping in and moving the water. It's like you're starting all over again.
You gotta keep the water.
No,
circulating.
absolutely not. No.
Then
no,
you're
no.
not doing anything.
No, you are. Like what you're not doing is being in pain, but it's still cold. And I remember when I was young, my parents would always say when I come from playing outside, like, no se me, don't go into the fridge
Yes.
because you're está
Acalorado.
calorado. No se meta al congelador que está calorado. If you don't speak Spanish, that sounds like I'm speaking in tongues.
It does. That word is like.
Yeah,
interesting.
but it was a myth because when I got to college, the first thing they made me do after a training session in the heat
Yep.
was jump on an ice bath.
Yeah.
And so there's some that like, I don't want to end up messing this up. There's some that are regulated, like it's like a jacuzzi, and they fix the temperature. And then there's some where you just put the ice.
Yep.
I think the ones you put the ice are colder for me, or maybe it's because I'm seeing the visual of the ice in there. But my parents lied to me. My entire
I think someone had lied to them.
somebody lied to them. Okay, that's a
'Cause
good
my dad told
conversation
me
to
the
have.
same
The difference
thing.
between like truth and trustworthy. I don't think there were.
And that's it.
that's the. But that's actually a concept that one of my favorite leaders talks about in a book. I could potentially lie to you, and without knowing that I'm lying and saying like it's beautiful outside, maybe because I looked at the wrong location in my app, and you go outside and it's freezing and it's raining. I lied, but my intention was to take care of you
Yep.
and help you prepare. And I think we don't talk about that enough, which I think in team sports, I think that's so big when in the middle of chaos and in the middle of a game, people are giving each other information. And sometimes when somebody corrects another player, they take it personal.
Yep.
And I think it's less about, I mean, it's important that the information was right or wrong, but it's also important as the receptor of the information to not feel that it matters as much as is he being a good teammate by looking out for us, or is he calling me out and my ego now is triggered? And I think being able to, in the middle of the game, I always like to tell our athletes before the game starts, it's like, yo, if we really want to be like a family on the field, like we're not gonna go and fix our family problems in front of everybody.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter how you feel. We need to find a way to take in the information and then talk about how we felt in the locker room or at our next practice. Yep. We're already fully into.
Yeah.
We're already fully in. But I think again we talked about it last episode. I think these are principles of emotional intelligence, relational intelligence, character development. When your emotions are triggered and you have to identify, is this my ego, or is the best thing to do is like, well, I don't know if he's right or wrong, but let me listen, all right, because they're trying to help me as opposed to like they're trying to call me out, and that diffuses your emotional agitation, I would say, and this all came out of how am I doing?
Yes.
How are you doing?
No, I just want like it's intention versus information, which is I think is the
Wow.
yeah. is the
Intention versus information.
key. Mm-hmm.
You have to
I'm just
take-
trying to keep the eyes.
Okay.
I was looking for it and I
Yeah.
found it. But I'm good.
But those are both INs.
Yeah.
That's an infinite statement.
And that's it for today.
Last episode, we talked about the reason as to why we choose the word infinite, and we went in depth on how it's just trying to become timeless. And I think as humans, we want to not leave this place and feel that we did not contribute. And our contribution is what makes us timeless, and that is our drive to a certain degree, not just in sports, but in family, in relationships, in at work. And I say that because when you bring the information and intention, and then in infinite statements, there's this interesting relationship that I have with words that have the IN before. And I think it's also a very prevalent theme in everything that we do as infinite ballers, that this word in actually points at where everything starts before we bring it out. And so one, we have to take note of that statement because that's good word, information and intention, and as principles to being able to have emotional intelligence that help you become more infinite. And when you think about words like inspiration, or words like innovation, or words like influencers, which is something that it's very prevalent now, it is this word in, and I always wonder if it's our ability to dig deep inside of us that actually activates these words out of them. If you remove the word in from infinite, you just become finite, you know? And so I think the in activates the inspiration. The in activates the innovation. The in activates the influential part of the person. So that's not what we were going to talk about today, but now it is. Before we continue, Mel, you want to take us to our warm-up?
For sure. Didn't know if you...
If I forgot?
It's cold in here. I'm not sure if we warmed up yet. What was your worst subject in school?
What was my worst subject in school? I think last episode I answered the question first. so,
Okay, since I'm so smart, no, I'm just kidding.
Actually, you were very school smart,
so
or still are.
What's funny is that I was, in seasons of my life, I would say the majority of it I was, but there were certain times where I was like, not getting it. It wasn't it. But I would say, if anything, the one I struggled with the most was English in like elementary school. So that was probably my worst one, but I think it was the majority of the reason for that was because a lot of the things are standardized, and it's about how fast you do something, and like because I was good with writing, but I took my time, and that made me feel like I was bad at what I was doing because I was such a slow reader. I couldn't like keep up, but I was understanding what I was reading, and I think it was a matter of I was a little distracted. And English wasn't our first language.
Yes, I think that's a big part of it.
Fortunately, I don't know. I guess compared to my brother, like my brother had to take English second language like classes, but I didn't. They just kind of threw me in with the wolves. But so I did fine, but like I loved math. I loved science. So compared to those two, and gym was like my favorite class.
Gym?
So yeah, oh my gosh, I remember his name. Mr. Fazaro or something like that. He was the best gym teacher.
Yeah.
He was so fun.
What made him so good?
He was just fun. He was mad chill. Like he kind of just like let us do what we wanted, but also was like taught us and stuff. And it was just like he would make us laugh. So when you're younger, you don't need much. Like
Yeah,
As long as
especially when you're
you.
in school, like just give
Mm,
me any piece of freedom and you're my favorite.
yep, exactly. In gym class, you could run around and stuff.
Yeah. I think that it does have to do with it being our second language. Was it our second language?
Yes,
Yes, for me, absolutely. You were born here,
I was.
so it was almost like you had two first languages, which makes it more difficult.
Well, when you're learning a
Well, I guess at
language, like
home you had, yeah,
fundamentally,
yeah.
like I was learning what my parents were speaking to
Yeah,
me, which was Spanish.
that's chaos.
So like, and then I started kindergarten, like, and my mom put me in pre-K. So like, that was when you're hitting like 4 years old.
Hmm.
So I already knew probably how to talk before then, at least like fundamentals, but like that was Spanish. So
Hmm.
then, but then they let you watch TV and like in school, like that's where you're learning English.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
fun fact, before 6 years old, that's like the easiest time to like learn a language. So like,
Why?
I think that's why I was fortunate. I don't know why. I think it's just like your brain development.
I have a theory, but
What's your theory?
what's my theory
Yeah.
as to why?
Yeah. Why before 6?
Why before 6? Because that's before 6 is the time in which we feel the least amount of embarrassment and shame, and that opens up our inside of our brain and everything inside. Like it just, I think those two keep us.
Wow. I've not that. That's a good word. That's a good hypothesis.
Because I look at my dad trying to learn,
Mm.
and he puts in effort, but I do think the barrier, because he can read it and he understands it and he can write it, but the gap becomes when he's going to articulate it.
Yeah.
And that cannot be anything other than what are they going to think? Will I get it wrong? Yeah, so I think that's probably why we perceive others more after 6.
Yeah, that's so fair. Like, I feel like there's so many people who, maybe like, since I'm like first generation, like born here in my family, like, if when we have a kid, oftentimes I find that that person struggles with learning Spanish,
Mm.
and I've heard it so many times. Like, I understand it, but I can't speak it.
Yeah.
It's like you
It's-
probably can speak it,
And we use it as like an excuse.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
but we're like afraid to get embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good point.
Yeah.
Speaking of embarrassment,
Yeah.
embarrassment is an emotion. Can we talk a little bit about, in the last episode, we talked about Infinite, Why Infinite podcast,
Uh-huh.
and then those dimensions of being infinite.
Uh-huh.
So relational, emotional, and character.
Yeah.
Want to talk a little bit about emotional intelligence and what does that look like? Can we break it down so that it's less of a big umbrella term
Yeah.
and like give us some examples?
Okay. Yes, that's a great question. Before I jump into that question, my subject was chemistry.
Thank you.
Uh, but no,
Chemistry.
yeah, chemistry.
I got to
I
avoid
think
that.
the only reason I passed chemistry, it was because I brought my teacher iced coffee, and I had a good smile. I don't
That's all
remember
you need in life, truly. I
Iced
mean,
coffee,
truly, I
iced
tell
coffee.
you. Yes,
iced
ice coffee
coffee and a smile.
and a smile.
I don't remember passing any test. I don't. I just.
By
I
the
don't.
grace of God.
Yeah, it was the grace of dunks, and I guess God, because He gave me apparently a smile. But yeah, it was chemistry. But back to the other question of breaking down a bit more emotional intelligence. Did you say emotional intelligence or any of them?
I did say emotional
Okay.
intelligence, but that was a great example of relational intelligence. You built the relationship of bringing the coffee, a smile from high school, man,
Yeah.
locked in.
I don't see reality outside of these 3 principles, and even in that, being able to know, like, I am not talented at at chemistry,
Not for me.
and so I need to relationally pull this off somehow, and that helps in like when you go to college, you gotta network. Like when you think
Mhm.
about university, it has the word universe and almost city, but with an S. But it's a city where people come together, and what you actually leave with is more of relational intelligence if you are interacting. But the problem is we are stuck with the textbooks and ignore the person, and we get a degree, and then wonder why we can't get a job. The textbook is not going to get you a job. It's a human.
And that's that on that.
And that is
That's good.
that is the episode for today.
Truly, because like when I was getting out of school, like I told you, that professor is what got me that job. Like I probably wouldn't have known about that job if I didn't have a relationship with that professor, and she remembered, hey, Melissa would be really into this, and so she recommended me, and the rest is history. But
and it's why we I think we know of it. We just maybe try to manipulate it. And what I don't want is to people to, oh, here's a tool, let me use it for my advantage.
Yep.
And I think when you hear of networking events, we know like networking is an extension of relational intelligence. I guess it would be a playing field for relational intelligence, because you can go to a networking event and not have relational intelligence, and you're not gonna make the most out of that networking experience.
Yeah.
But the rep of going is gonna help you gain relational intelligence. But yeah, so I do think that we do catch on to this, and we give different names to it. But you give it, I think when we give it a name that is just for the outcome of getting the job, you neglect the human, and then it actually counteracts or it's counterproductive to the goal, the diamond of relational intelligence. And so we won't go into transactional versus relational, which is a whole topic that I'm so passionate about. But to answer your question on emotional intelligence, going back to, for example, the language barrier. When you talk about emotional intelligence, it's your ability to manage your emotions and almost become comfortable with not just the good ones, but be okay with the ones that don't feel as good, and realizing that your emotions are just signals rather than it's a plus or a negative, like good or bad. And this past winter we were training some players, and there was 2 people who reached out to me and said, hey, there's this player that has been going to your training sessions, and he has improved drastically. And for me, yes, compliments. We do a great job with our coaching, but it would be arrogant of me to just leave it at, I'm a good coach. And I realized that this player that they were talking about is a player that got to this country not too long ago. And he still has a heavy accent, but he has to speak in English everywhere that he goes, knowing that for longer periods of his life, he has spoken a different language. When you think about emotional intelligence, it's almost thinking about that feeling of embarrassment. And it's not that he doesn't feel embarrassed to make the mistake. It's just that despite being embarrassed, he's going to do it. And I feel that because every day since he got to this country, he has almost been obligated to overlook embarrassment, it translates onto the soccer field. And that same principle on the soccer field activates an ability to make more mistakes, which gives you more ability, a greater ability just statistically to fix the mistakes. And when you make a mistake and you are not consumed by the emotions of making a mistake, which has to do with what you feel others may perceive, or how down you look on yourself, it actually limits you. And so in addition to us being able to create a good space and a good education and developmental so there it is. There's me fighting the being embarrassed on camera talking, but it actually gives him an advantage that he might not even be aware of, that every time that he tries a word in English that he doesn't know how to articulate, he's actually becoming a better soccer player. You know, and so that's when you talk about emotional intelligence and how we want to help, is I want to help you not just see how it affects on the field. I want to show you that, in fact, what you're doing at school is interconnected with what you're going to do on the soccer field. And then there's no longer a moment in which you're not evolving or becoming or optimizing your human performance, which again, if you coach the human underneath, inevitably the player is going to be affected. So that's an example of emotional intelligence.
That's so good. That's very good. I love how you connect how what they're doing off the field is helping them develop on the field, and that was just such a great example of that, because you wouldn't think that practicing a language is going to help you practicing your sport. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you've been talking a little bit about other aspects of emotional intelligence. Do you want to tell us a little bit about forgiveness and how that might impact your ability to function as both a human and a player?
Yeah, there's some principles that just fall underneath all three, that affect all three. I was in a mental performance session with an individual player, and we were talking about how to optimize your performance, and we landed at the fact that the athlete's speed of forgiveness is actually a metric of their potential as an athlete. And the reason that that is true is because your ability to forgive yourself after a mistake actually allows you to be more present in the next action. Your ability to forgive your teammate when they make a mistake allows you to be more present in the next play with your teammate. Your ability to forgive your coach when he or she makes a mistake also keeps you, gives you the ability to perform the next rep without resentment, without bitterness. And I think that these are principles that we don't live without in the real world. There's no relationship that actually works without forgiveness. And in fact, I think that the health of a relationship is actually revealed by the individual's ability to forgive each other, because the actual truth behind that is that we're going to come short of being the perfect version for the other. And it doesn't even matter who's right or wrong. It's the ability to forgive the other one that maximizes your ability to stay in relationship and the health of the relationship. And again, taking that principle that's true in the real world and putting it into your athletic career actually unlocks a level of emotional equilibrium, because forgiveness starts to take at you, and now you're playing heavier because you're resentful at yourself, at your teammates, or your coach. And so what does it look like to be able to express yourself as light as you could possibly be on the field or on the court? And that's a principle that when I talked with this athlete, I was like, it's fascinating how this principle is so interwoven in the Bible. And the Bible, regardless of religion, or not just in the Bible, but a lot of religions hold this principle of forgiveness as such a pivotal tool to maximize our human expression. And so yeah, forgiveness is one that I think hits all three of them, because you need discipline to be able to manage my emotions, say this, but I have the disciplines to say this. I feel this way about this person, that brings in the relational, but I'm going to choose to assume the best of them. And then when you start, it's almost like a triangle that it's always working together to amplify our best expression as athletes. So yeah, so that's an example with forgiveness being one of the principles that we talk about. This episode is actually going to be a little bit shorter, okay, because of our schedule today, and so let's wrap it up. Although we didn't go for long, I think we talked about a lot of really helpful stuff that I align with what we want to do with regards to relational, emotional intelligence, and character development. you always say that if you would have had infinite ballers in your youth career,
Yeah.
it would have unlocked an athlete that was significantly greater than what you maxed out at. From today's conversation, what do you feel like that younger athlete would have really, really benefited from?
Oh my goodness. Everything. No, I think I struggled a lot with not being able to. I resist the urge to say control my emotions,
Mhm.
but like to
Manage?
manage them,
Yeah.
I guess. Like that I struggled with a lot. So I think um, if I would have known to practice forgiveness with myself, with
Mhm.
my teammates, I would have gotten a lot more done because I was very hard on myself.
Mm.
If you don't balance that with
Mhm.
forgiveness, then it's more destructive than it is
Mhm.
helpful.
Mhm.
So I would definitely say to practice that forgiveness because it's not going to be
Yeah.
a one and done situation. I think that would have helped me a lot unlock my potential, like on field and off field intelligence
Yeah.
would have been.
Yeah. I'm glad that even if I didn't get the opportunity to have infinite ballers help you as an athlete, I think believing in these will help you help all the other
Mhm.
Melissas. But okay, we're gonna finish with that. I think this was a really good episode. One of our better ones, even though it was a bit shorter. Uh, you look great today. I feel like
Thank you.
I love wearing the same outfits a lot of the time. Like if you wore that every episode,
The
I
people
would
will
be happy.
judge.
I don't care about the people. I like I do care about the people, but this is my Roy.
Yeah, yeah.
So you look great. I love doing this with you, and thank you for sharing your insight, your laughter, and your presence. I love you, and I'll see you guys next episode.